"You don't belong here," they told a single dad. He built the entire building, they laughed, when Marcus Webb showed up to the Whitmore Tower leasing office in work boots and a faded jacket. "Sir," said the woman at the front desk, Diane Hollister, not even looking up from her paperwork. "Residential units here start at $6,000 a month. You might want to try Maple Commons." Her colleague, Brett Stafford, the building's leasing manager, leaned against the glass partition and crossed his arms. "Yeah, this isn't really the kind of place for," he gestured vaguely at Marcus. "For you." Marcus looked around the marble lobby. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A concierge desk with fresh flowers. Elevator doors that opened without a sound. He nodded slowly. "I see," he said. "Thank you." He walked back outside. Back to his truck. Back to his 7-year-old son, Caleb, who was waiting in the passenger seat with a juice box and a library book about trains. What Diane didn't know, Marcus Webb owned Whitmore Tower. Every unit. The parking structure. The entire block. His name was on the deed, the LLC, and the development permit that had turned this empty warehouse district into the most sought-after residential address in the city. What Brett Stafford didn't know, he just sneered at the man who signed his paychecks. By Thursday of that week, Brett would be escorted from the building by HR. Diane would quietly submit her resignation, and Marcus Webb would walk back through those same lobby doors, not as a rejected applicant, but as the man the entire building stood up for. But first, there was a Tuesday morning. There was Caleb. And there was a life that had nothing to do with marble lobbies or men who crossed their arms at strangers. Marcus woke at 5:45. Before the alarm, he always did now, 3 years of single parenthood had rewired something in him that no amount of sleep could fully switch off. He lay still for 30 seconds, listening, Caleb's breathing through the monitor, wind against the windows of their rental apartment on the east side. The refrigerator cycling. Still here. Everyone still here. He got up quietly, started the coffee, and unrolled the kitchen table blueprint he'd been studying before bed. His current project, a mixed-use development in the Arts District, 12 stories, ground floor retail, 72 residential units. He'd been building things since he was 19, started as a framer, learned concrete, learned electrical. Learned everything until one day he realized he knew more than the developer he was working for, and decided to become the developer himself. Marcus Webb Development Group had been incorporated on a Tuesday in March 9 years ago, with $4,000 and a business license. He was now worth somewhere north of $60 million. He didn't think about that number much. It was just a tool, like a hammer. You used it to build things. What he thought about was Caleb. Caleb, who had his mother's eyes and his father's stubborn streak. Caleb, who was 7 and obsessed with trains and had started keeping a journal because his teacher said it would help him process big feelings. And who had, apparently, filled 3 notebooks in 2 months. Marcus had not read those notebooks. Caleb had not offered them. They had an unspoken agreement about privacy. Marcus respected it the way he'd wanted someone to respect his when he was 7. He made Caleb's breakfast, eggs, because Caleb had decided overnight that cereal was for babies. He put the toast on and pulled out the permission slip from Caleb's backpack, field trip to the Railroad Museum next Friday, and signed it without hesitation. Caleb was going to love that. Marcus made a note to take the afternoon off and surprise him there. He was pressing the permission slip flat when he heard the small feet. Caleb appeared in the kitchen doorway in dinosaur pajamas, hair tilted 40 degrees to one side, squinting at the light. "Dad, morning, bud. Is it a school day?" "It is." Caleb processed this, accepted it, climbed onto the kitchen stool. Can I have my eggs with hot sauce? No, why? Because you're 7. That's not a reason. Marcus put the plate in front of him. It's the only reason you're getting. Caleb ate. Marcus drank his coffee and looked at the blueprint and listened to his son narrate the plot of the train book he'd been reading, which involved a coal engine named Frederick who got lost in Scotland and had to make friends with a sheep to find his way home. It was, Caleb said, extremely realistic. Marcus listened, nodded, asked questions where they were warranted. This was the part of his life he never described to anyone, because he didn't have the words for what it was. Just this. Eggs and blueprints and a 7-year-old who was, against all odds, turning into a good person. He dropped Caleb at school at 7:55, watched him run toward the building without looking back. Good sign. Then Marcus drove to Whitmore Tower. He'd been meaning to visit for months. His development group had acquired the building 2 years ago, fully leased and operational. It ran well, good property manager, low vacancy rate, solid maintenance crew. Marcus tended to let well-run properties run. He had 14 buildings across the metro area and a philosophy: fix what's broken, don't touch what isn't. But he'd gotten a complaint last week. A tenant, a retired school librarian named Eleanor Park on the 9th floor, had written an actual letter. Not an email. A letter, in neat handwriting, describing a leaking pipe in her bathroom ceiling that maintenance had documented 3 times without fixing. She'd enclosed a photograph of the water stain. It was shaped, she noted, like Florida. Marcus had called his property manager, who'd said it was being handled. Marcus had decided to see for himself. He parked in a visitor space, his own parking structure, and walked to the lobby entrance. He was wearing what he always wore to site visits: work jeans, a navy jacket, boots that had seen real use. He didn't own a suit. He'd bought one once for his wife's funeral and given it away the following week. The lobby was impressive. He remembered the renovation. All that marble had been his call. He'd been right about it. He walked toward the front desk. Diane Hollister looked up. Her expression shifted in a specific way Marcus had learned to recognize over the years: the quick assessment, the calculation, the verdict. "Can I help you? I'd like to speak with the building manager. Do you have an appointment?" "No," she smiled with only the muscles required. "I'm afraid Mr. Stafford is very busy. If you're interested in units, we do have a wait list. I'm not interested in a unit. I'd like to speak with building management. Is Mr. Stafford available?" She clicked something on her computer. "What's this regarding?" "A maintenance issue." Another click. "And your name?" "Marcus Webb." Nothing, the name meant nothing to her. He wasn't surprised. He'd structured the LLC carefully. It didn't come up in casual searches. He liked it that way. She disappeared through a side door. A minute later, Brett Stafford appeared. Mid-40s. Well-dressed, the kind of confident that came from never having been wrong in front of his own mirror. He took in Marcus the same way Diane had. Faster, more certain. "Can I help you?" "Maintenance complaint. 9th floor. Eleanor Park. Leaking pipe. 3 documented visits, no repair." Brett's expression was patient in the way that meant impatient underneath. "We take maintenance requests very seriously. I can put you in touch with our maintenance coordinator. I'd rather speak with you. And you are? A friend of the tenant?" Something like that. Brett looked at the work boots. The jacket, the unmistakable absence of a tie. He made his decision. "Look, I appreciate your concern, but our maintenance team follows a process. If Miss Park has an active request, she's had 3. Over 4 months. These things take time. Materials, scheduling, a leaking pipe takes time. Brett smiled. Thinly, I'm not sure you quite understand how building management works. This isn't, he paused, chose his next words carefully, and chose wrong. This isn't the kind of situation where someone can just walk in and demand immediate action. There are protocols. I understand protocols. I'm sure you do. But unless you have a direct stake in this property, he let the sentence hang, meaning, which obviously you don't. Marcus looked at him for a moment. Then he looked around the lobby. The flowers, the elevator doors, the marble that had been his idea. Right, he said. Thank you. He walked outside, got back in his truck, called Caleb's school to confirm the field trip permission slip had arrived. It had. Caleb would be thrilled. Then Marcus made 3 phone calls. The first was to his attorney. The second was to his property manager. The third was to Eleanor Park on the 9th floor, who answered on the second ring and sounded like someone who hadn't expected anyone to call back. Miss Park, my name is Marcus Webb. I own this building. I received your letter. I'm standing in the parking lot right now. Can you give me 20 minutes? A long pause. You own the building? Yes, ma'am. Another pause. Then, quietly, I'll put the kettle on. Eleanor Park's apartment smelled like books and dried lavender. She was 71, sharp-eyed, and had spent 34 years as a school librarian before retiring. She had strong opinions about the Dewey Decimal System and equally strong opinions about contractors who didn't finish their work. The water stain was indeed Florida-shaped. There was also, upon closer inspection, evidence of active dampness in the ceiling that suggested the pipe above was still leaking slowly. Marcus took photographs with his phone. He noted the date, the apartment number, and the description of the issue. How long has Mr. Stafford been leasing manager here? He asked. Eleanor considered. About a year. Before him there was a lovely young woman named Sarah, very attentive. She paused. Mr. Stafford is very polished. Marcus heard what she wasn't saying. Has he been dismissive about other issues? Other tenants? Eleanor looked at her teacup. I don't like to cause trouble. You wrote me a letter, in your own handwriting. I'd say you've earned the right to cause a little trouble. She almost smiled. There have been complaints from some of the newer tenants about how they're spoken to at the front desk. And there's a family on the 3rd floor, the Mendozas, who've had a broken elevator button for 6 months. They have a grandmother who uses a wheelchair. Marcus wrote it down. He stayed 40 minutes. Left with a list of 6 issues that should have been handled months ago. He stopped at the 3rd floor on his way out. Knocked on the Mendoza door. Spoke with Rosa Mendoza, who was 67 and had indeed been using the stairs, all 3 flights, because the elevator didn't register her floor. In the truck, Marcus called his property manager. I need Stafford and the front desk associate, Diane Hollister, in the leasing office tomorrow morning at 9, and I need a maintenance crew at Whitmore by end of day today. Start with 9F and 3C. Is everything okay? No, but it will be. He hung up, sat for a minute, looked at the building through his windshield. He thought about what Brett Stafford had said. This isn't the kind of situation where someone can just walk in and demand immediate action. Actually, Marcus thought, that was exactly the kind of situation this was. He picked up Caleb from school at 3:15. Caleb got in the truck and immediately began describing, in significant detail, a disagreement with his classmate Devin about whether a brontosaurus could beat a T-Rex in a fight. What do you think? Marcus asked. I think Devin's wrong, Caleb said. But I'm being diplomatic. Good man. They stopped for burgers. Caleb had his with extra pickles. Marcus had his with nothing, because he'd been eating burgers the same way since 1998 and wasn't changing now. They sat in a corner booth and Caleb drew in his current journal, trains and what appeared to be a brontosaurus in a boxing ring, while Marcus answered 2 emails and tried not to answer 3 others. Dad, do you think I could be an engineer? Like trains? Marcus looked up. What kind? The kind that designs them, not drives them. I mean, driving would be cool too, but designing seems like you get to make the rules. You'd be good at that. I know. Caleb said it without arrogance, just certainty. It was his mother's quality, that clean self-knowledge. Marcus had always envied it. He'd taken years longer to find out what he was good at. Caleb seemed to already know. You're going to be great at whatever you decide, Marcus said. Caleb considered this. Yeah, he said. Probably then. Can I have a milkshake? Sure chocolate? Is there another kind? Caleb grinned. The grin that still hit Marcus the same way it had the first time he saw it, in a hospital room 3 years ago, when Caleb was 4 and had just been told his mother wasn't coming home and had cried for an hour, and then, somehow through some alchemy of childhood that Marcus would never fully understand, had turned to his father and smiled. Not a happy smile. A different thing altogether. A "we're still here" smile. Marcus had kept it ever since. Thursday morning. 9 a.m. Whitmore Tower leasing office. Brett Stafford had come in confident, jacket pressed, expecting perhaps a routine meeting, some kind of routine quarterly review, maybe a new directive from the property manager. He had not been told who had requested the meeting. Diane Hollister stood beside him. Her expression was unreadable. Marcus walked in at 9:04. He hadn't changed his style. Same jacket, same boots. He had, however, brought one thing, a manila folder. He sat down across the table. Brett stared. "Good morning," Marcus said. Brett started. "Stopped, you were in the lobby Tuesday. I was. You said you were a friend of a tenant. I said I was something like that." Marcus opened the folder. Set 3 documents on the table. Deed of property, LLC operating agreement. My name is on both. He slid them across. I own this building. I've owned it for 2 years. The silence was total. Diane looked at the papers. Then at Brett. Then at the papers again. Brett's color changed. It happened in stages. First the slow draining, then a flush of something that might have been the beginning of an attempt to speak. He started. "On Tuesday," Marcus said. "You told me I didn't understand how building management works. You implied I didn't have a stake in this property." He kept his voice level. "You were wrong on both counts. Mr. Webb, I also have documentation of 6 unresolved maintenance issues. One affecting an elderly tenant who's been unable to use the elevator to her floor for 6 months." He set that file on the table as well. "My maintenance team arrived yesterday. They fixed 5 of the 6. The 6th requires a contractor who's scheduled for Monday." Brett was nodding now. The wrong kind of nodding, the kind that was buying time. "Mr. Stafford." Marcus's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "I'm not here to have a conversation about your intentions. I'm here because Eleanor Park wrote me a letter in her own handwriting about a leaking pipe. And Rosa Mendoza has been climbing 3 flights of stairs for 6 months because it was easier than calling the desk again." The room held very still. Marcus stood. "HR will be in contact with both of you today. I'd encourage you to cooperate with that process." He picked up the folder. He was almost to the door when Brett spoke. "Mr. Webb," his voice had changed, all the smooth polish gone. Just a man, smaller than he'd been 5 minutes ago. I didn't know. Marcus paused, turned halfway. That's true, he said. You didn't know who I was. But you did know who she was. He meant Eleanor. He meant Rosa Mendoza. He meant everyone who'd asked for help and been given a process instead. You knew exactly what they needed. You chose not to provide it. He walked out. In the lobby, he stopped at the marble front desk, empty now. Looked at the fresh flowers. He'd specified those in the building design. Fresh flowers. Weekly. Budget approved. A small thing. The kind of thing that told people they lived somewhere that cared. He took out his phone. Texted Eleanor Park. Maintenance is coming Monday for the final repair. Thank you for writing to me. She replied in 4 minutes. Thank you for listening. Your son is lucky to have a father like you. Marcus read it twice. Didn't reply right away. Just stood in the lobby he'd built and let it settle. Then he walked outside, got in his truck, and drove to Caleb's school to eat lunch with him in the cafeteria, which he did every third Thursday because Caleb had asked once and Marcus had said yes, and now it was a thing. Caleb was surprised to see him. Then immediately unsurprised, in the way kids are when something confirms what they already believed. Dad, hey bud, you're in my cafeteria. I know. Did something happen? Work stuff. It's handled. Marcus looked at the tray Caleb had assembled. A peanut butter sandwich, apple slices, and what appeared to be 3 chocolate milks. 3? Devin said you can only have 2. I wanted to see. And? Caleb opened the 3rd one. They let me. Marcus sat down. The cafeteria was loud and warm and smelled like industrial cleaner and bread. Kids moved around them in chaotic orbits. Caleb ate his sandwich and told Marcus about a book he was reading. Not the train one, a new one. About a kid who builds a robot. And Marcus listened and ate a bag of pretzels from the vending machine and felt, with a certainty he couldn't have articulated, that this was the right place to be. By the following week, the building had a new leasing manager. Her name was Claire Santos. She'd been the assistant manager at one of Marcus's other properties for 2 years and had never once received a complaint. She stopped by Eleanor Park's apartment on her 2nd day to introduce herself. Eleanor offered her tea. Brett Stafford's departure was handled quietly, the way these things usually were. He landed at another firm in a different city. Marcus heard about it through his attorney and felt nothing in particular. People moved through the industry. Some learned, some didn't. That was their work to do. Diane Hollister had submitted her resignation the same day she met with HR. Marcus had respected it. No counteroffer made. Some things couldn't be rebuilt. The Mendozas sent a card, handwritten, like Eleanor's letter. Rosa Mendoza had included a photograph of herself at the elevator on her floor, which she was apparently now using daily. She looked pleased. Marcus had put both letters, Eleanor's and Rosa's, in a folder in his desk at home. He didn't know exactly why. He kept a lot of things in folders. Blueprints, contracts, permits. Maybe it was that kind of thinking, that some things deserved documentation, evidence that they happened. 3 weeks later, on a Saturday, Marcus was at his drafting table with Caleb beside him. Caleb working on his own building design, which was primarily a 3-story structure for trains, with a special wing for what Caleb called train doctors. Marcus was reviewing structural drawings for the Arts District project. Caleb looked up from his work. Dad, what do you do when someone's mean to you? Marcus put down his pencil. What happened? Nothing big. Just Devin again. He said my building was dumb. What did you say? Nothing, I just kept building it. Marcus looked at his son. At the drawing on the table, the train hospital, rendered in careful pencil lines. Much better than Devon probably gave it credit for. That's usually the right answer, he said. Caleb nodded. Went back to his drawing. Marcus went back to his. Outside, the city moved through its ordinary Saturday. Kids on bikes. Leaves starting to turn. Somewhere across town, Whitmore Tower's new leasing office was taking calls from a waitlist of people hoping to get in. Claire Santos was answering every one, and Eleanor Park, on the 9th floor, was sitting in her living room with the afternoon light coming through the window, ceiling fully repaired, reading a novel about Scotland that her granddaughter had sent. The water stain that looked like Florida was gone. Just smooth plaster, freshly painted. Some things, when attended to, became as though they'd never been. Caleb finished his drawing, held it up. What do you think? Marcus looked at it carefully. The 3-story train hospital, the little windows, the sign above the door that said, in Caleb's handwriting, all trains welcome. I think, Marcus said, you're going to be a great engineer. Caleb lowered the drawing. Considered this, I know, he said. I've been thinking about it, and I'm pretty sure I have good ideas. You do. Thanks, Dad, sure. They worked in comfortable silence as the afternoon stretched around them. A father and his son. A drafting table covered in futures. A building across town where the flowers were fresh and the elevators all worked, and the people inside were treated like they belonged there. Which, of course, they did.